Good morning, Liberty family. It's good to see you today in this way, and I trust that you're having a good day in the Lord. Uh, we're in the season of Lent, and I want to be talking with you about that this morning. What that means, the 40 days and the 6 Sundays prior to Easter. And during that time, we're trying to look at ourselves and look at the gospel, trying to hear what God is saying to us about what He's done for us and who He's making us, what we're becoming because of that. I'd like for us to think about that today. It's amazing, how far love will actually go to reach us. It's amazing the lengths that God will go to, the height, the breadth, the length, and the depth. He will go to reach us with His love. And this whole season of the year points toward that, how desperately He wants to know us. It reminds me of a story that is a true story, actually, about a little boy that was about 8 or 9 years old, and he had a little brother who was very sick, and the little brother was going to have a transfusion to live. So they came to discover that the little boy had the kind of blood that he needed. Need to have some of that kind of blood. So the parents and the doctor got the little boy together and talked to him and told him, said, "Son, your brother's real sick, and he has to have some blood to live. And if he doesn't, he won't live. And you have the right kind. We'd like to ask you to give him some blood so he could live. Would you do that? Do you understand that?" He said, "I do." He said, "Can I think about it a minute?" They said, "Sure." He walked over to the window and looked out the window, stood there a moment or two, came back and said, "Okay, I'm ready." They said, "You ready to do it?" He said, "Yes." So they went in and began the procedure. Little boy lay down in the bed beside his brother and was hooked up to give the transfusion. He just lay there gritting his teeth and with his eyes shut real tight. And after it was through and they began to unhook all the apparatus that they'd been using, they said, "Okay, son." He looked up and he said, "It's not over, is it?" And they said, "Yeah, it's over." He said, "But I'm not dead yet." And they realized that when he went over and stood in front of that window, he didn't just make a decision to give some blood. He thought he was giving it all. He thought he was giving his life for his brother. It's amazing how far love will go to reach people who are being loved. The Bible tells us a lot about that with Jesus. It reveals the heart of God in that way. Listen to Isaiah 53. "Surely He has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we esteemed Him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But He was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace is upon Him, and by His stripes we are healed. All we, like sheep, have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way, and the Lord has laid on Him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed, and He was afflicted, yet He opened not His mouth. He was led as a lamb to slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, so He opened not His mouth. God loves us so much, and He wants to free us so we can flourish in goodness and in grace, and be the ones who display his glory to all around us. In order for these things to happen in us and for us, God in Jesus Christ changes places with us. The Word is made flesh. Jesus dies on the cross. That's the crucifixion. He's raised to new life. That's the resurrection. And that life that he gives us is forever. And that is eternity. And through all of this, we become the children of God because we have faith in him and receive by faith all that he's done. And we're not children just by virtue of creation anymore. We're children now by virtue of relationship. That's what this whole week is about. The scourging, how awful it was to be beaten with a cat of nine tails. It's awful. 39 stripes with leather tongs, 9 of them on a handle, pieces of glass or stone or steel. In the end, whipped by a big, strong soldier who's an expert in whipping people. Beaten for us. All the abuse in the world was purchased in terms of pardon and forgiveness and healing in that moment. So whatever we've received and whatever we've handed out, all that Jesus endured was a price that could pay for all of that, to resolve it for all of us. There was the scoffing, the mocking, the robe they put on him, bowing down like they were worshiping him, ridiculing him, spitting on him. He took it all. It's amazing how far love will go to reach the ones being loved. Then they planted a crown of thorns and they shoved it down on his head. Can you imagine that? On top of everything he already had done to him, this crown just goes down on his head. All these thorns penetrating him. It's interesting it's a crown of thorns because that reminds us of something if we think back to Genesis. Remember when sin came into the world, Adam and Eve sinned, there was a result of that happened not just to them, but it happened to all the earth. He said, you know, there are going to be weeds now, and there are going to be thorns come from the ground. And those weeds and those thorns were symbols of and fruit of sin. So this crown, they didn't know what they were doing, but the crown they put upon his head was a crown of thorns. It meant that everything that sin is has been put on him. And now he bears that for you and for me. Shame, disgrace, pain, even death. You remember in Genesis 22, Abraham takes his son Isaac, his only son, up the mountain to offer him as a sacrifice to God. Remember the story? He tells the men at the bottom, he doesn't know what's going on, but he tells the men at the bottom, you stay here. The lad and I are going up to worship, and we will return to you. But yet he was going up there to take his life. They got up there and made the altar. Isaac was placed on the altar. Abraham took the knife and he was ready to take the life of his son. And an angel of God stopped him. He said, "Don't do this. Look, over there caught in the thicket by the horns is a ram. Go take that ram and offer it. God said, and it'll be acceptable in my sight. You will not offer your son to me." And Abraham did that. Abraham did that. And it was not necessary for him to go through with offering his son to God. It was done. The sacrifice was accepted. And it all points toward this moment. Our sacrificial lamb, Jesus, takes our place. And he dies that we may live, not just for time, but for all eternity with God. Little did these soldiers know the person they had in front of them that day. They didn't really know who he really was. The thorns they used to torment him and torture him that night, in addition to everything else that will happen, all pointed to the reason for his very presence there that night. The curse was going to be broken. The penalty of sin will be paid. And once again, relationship with God would be restored. It's interesting they placed them on his head. Think of the agony. He'd already been beaten brutally. He was bleeding profusely. And now they seized the moment to increase the pain. Place these on his head. Think of the relationship to our lives and the symbolism behind that, the head. The head, the place where all the origin of our thoughts, our understanding of who we are and what the world is and how to look at one another and receive one another. It's an amazing thing. We have painful thoughts and memories, emotional agony, sometimes thoughts that plague us, something that was done to us or something that we did maybe to someone else, tempting us to do wrong. Words people have said to us that hurt us and words we've said that hurt others. The gates to our lives, the main gates are found in the head. There are the eye gates. What we see. Unfortunately, sometimes what we lust after. What we fix our attention upon. It might be a shocking event that we see that's just horrible to watch. It may be humiliating moments that we've seen, maybe that we caused, or maybe even they were pointed towards us. Who knows? But our eyes, the Bible talks about it so much. Lift up your eyes. Look. See. Our eye gates. What are we focused on in life? And then there's the mouth gate. Why, the breath, and through our nose and mouth, the breath we take in, these gates, is what keeps us alive. But it's also in the mouth where we have taste. Some things we like, some things we don't. And we choose because of that taste. Sometimes we choose things that aren't good for us. Sometimes we're a little wiser. But what enters into us comes through this gate. It's important. It nourishes us. Through this, we're nourished in our lives. But the Bible also says that the tongue found in the mouth is the revealer of our heart. That what comes out of our mouth is what's in our heart. So, it's a pretty important place. Words create worlds, you see. It's important that what comes out of our mouth makes a contribution to the world rather than making it worse. How we say it, when we say it, to whom, where, all of this. Jesus puts a crown on his head and a mouth gate, the eye gates are there, and also the ears. What are we listening to? To whom are we listening? Sounds and voices and instructions, opportunities. People are calling out to us to receive this or receive that, receive the other. Many more things come to us through what we hear. It's important. To whom or what are we listening? All that we've ever heard is separated us from God. The crown of thorns on the head deals with all of that. All of our eyes, all of our words, all of what comes in, all of what goes out, all of what we hear. The crown of thorns on the head. It reminds us of our sinful and fallen state. It was cruelty that was added to suffering. And Jesus received it to take our fallen place and wash away all those filthy things that had penetrated our minds and our lives through those various gates of our lives. And he did it all for you and for me. Let's hear Isaiah 53 again. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace is upon him. By his stripes we are healed. All we, like sheep, have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way. And the Lord has laid on him the iniquity, the lawlessness of us all. He was opposed, oppressed, and afflicted. Yet he opened not his mouth. He was led as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, so he opened not his mouth. That's the Jesus we know. It's amazing how far love will go to reach the one someone desires to love. Think about that. Until we meet again, we'll be in prayer for each and all of you, and we'll remain ready to help you. Just call, and we'll be there. Blessings to you today.